Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, and welcome to the Alaska Weather Show on this Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. And as always, if you'd like additional weather information, you can go to weather.gov/Alaska and find all sorts of interesting weather information there. And if you just go to weather.gov, it'll give you a map of the entire country, and you can click for anywhere in the nation, any state where you may have friends or relatives, and check up on the weather there and see where the most significant weather advisories, watches, and warnings are currently in effect. So let's take a look. And speaking of warnings, we have red flag warnings that remain in effect this afternoon and evening for east central areas, the Yukon Flats, 40-mile country, those areas. And also that'll be repeated again tomorrow for the threat of scattered thunderstorms enhancing fire starts. Wet and cooler weather is ongoing now in the west and southern areas of the state. Gulf low pressure has been forming today, and the rain will be spreading eastward up into the southeast panhandle as we round out the week later Thursday and into Friday. Warm and dry outlook still looks like it's going to hold here for the end of the month up in the northeast portions of the state, and I'll show you that coming up toward the end of this particular segment. But here again we have the red flag warnings that are in effect, including Fort Yukon, the Yukon Flats, Eagle on through the 40-mile Gold Country down to Northway. It's in effect until midnight this Wednesday evening, and then again late Thursday morning through Thursday evening, because we're going to have scattered thunderstorms that develop. Rather warm conditions persist with dry conditions here for not just this afternoon and evening, but again on Thursday. On top of that, we have an mid and upper level ridge of high pressure sitting out over the northern Yukon, and there's going to be an easterly wave kind of slide by south of there down toward Northway Thursday night and in the pre-dawn of Friday morning, which could enhance some thunderstorms as it works its way westward. So here is where the most significant fire potential exists due to some lightning strikes there. The area is highlighted in red, not just for Wednesday today, but again on Thursday, and hence that's why we have those red flag warnings in effect being put out there by the Fairbanks Forecast Office. Now, looking at satellite imagery, we continue to see some showers continuing over the lower portion of the southeast panhandle. Numerous scattered thunderstorms across northwest Canada and especially the Yukon. And we'll start to see some scattered storms popping today along the Alcan border as we get a little deeper into the afternoon and early evening. There's even been some lightning strikes in the clouds up there east of Kodiak, as there's some convective potential there out over the western Gulf as that low pressure system develops now to the east of Kodiak, and that low will be just sitting out over the Gulf here to round out the week and at least begin the weekend. It's not going to be an especially deep low, but nevertheless it's a feature, one of the dominant features. And then for the rest of this week, we'll be watching a trough of low pressure that extends from along the Alcan border east of Fairbanks to back through the northwest, just northeast of Kotzebue. And again, we continue to have a low pressure that's vertically stacked from the surface into the upper levels of the atmosphere, sitting out over the lower Chukchi Sea. That feature will gradually weaken as well as we head through tomorrow and into Friday. But the primary feature on the map is that low east of Kodiak Island over the western Gulf. It's bringing some locally heavier rains now along the eastern Kenai, as we'd expect with the easterly winds coming up there along the coastal mountains, and otherwise the potential for some scattered thunderstorms to pop as we go through the evening there across east central areas, maybe even a rumble of thunder continuing overnight in a few spots there. Otherwise just cloudy with some occasional light showers back through southwest areas and the west, and it's brought cooler temperatures today, only in the 50s to near 60 at best. Thursday we'll see that easterly wave begin to move out of the Yukon and head toward the Alcan border there along and south of the Alaska Range, which will enhance the potential for some scattered storms there across east central areas. Meanwhile, low pressure will sit and spin there east of Kodiak Island out over the western Gulf and bringing a frontal trough, lifting it northward toward the panhandle, which will increase rains first along the coast Thursday evening and Thursday night. And most areas there of the southeast panhandle should be picking up rain, though it will tend to be drier the farther north you go. Haines on over toward Yakutat, we'll see less in the way of shower potential with that. And then on Friday, the low just continues to sit and spin out over the western half of the Gulf, and we'll have weak low pressure up over the northeast, east central areas. It'll be a focus for some additional scattered showers and isolated storms. So low temperatures on Thursday morning will be in the lower to mid 50s across the southeast, and back through south central areas, looking to be around 48 at Cordova and on up toward Glen Allen. Otherwise, lower 50s just elsewhere, and temperatures may be able to squeak out a 70-degree reading there at Glen Allen Thursday afternoon if there's a few breaks. And temperatures not quite as cool there. Anchorage westward back toward McGrath, get back up into maybe the mid-60s instead of only hovering near 60. Generally, it's been in the 50s today. And then Friday morning lows across the region, generally lower 50s, all areas. And then on Friday afternoon, if we can get a few breaks in the clouds, it could be up to 71 at Talkeetna, 67 at Anchorage along the southeast panhandle, 61 there at Juneau and Ketchikan, and further west maybe only holding there around 59 at Kodiak. Across the north, lows will get down mid-upper 30s right along the immediate Arctic coast and the far western tip of the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, lows will generally be in the 50s along the Yukon River with as warm as 58 at Fort Yukon, and then temperatures at Fort Yukon could be back up in the lower 80s Thursday afternoon. That's going to help fuel the instability for those scattered thunderstorms and the enhanced fire danger due to lightning strikes. Otherwise, cooling down north slope, not 80 degrees like it was the other day at Dead Horse. It's back around 50, and that'll be the case Thursday afternoon. Also back there toward the west, generally mid and upper 40s along the northwest coast and the Seward Peninsula as you get inland, back into the 50s with some 60s appearing as you get further inland. And then lows Friday morning will generally be lower 40s, 40 to 45 along the Arctic coast, Seward Peninsula, but back in the 50s as you go up the Yukon River Valley, and again back up into the lower 80s there at Fort Yukon. Otherwise, much of the upper half there of the Yukon Valley in the 70s, with 50s prevailing back through the Seward Peninsula. Across the southwest, we're looking at lows generally in the upper 40s to around 50 degrees, generally upper 40s out extending through the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And then temperatures Thursday afternoon, a few areas could get back up above 60 toward the middle and upper Yukon Valley and the Kuskokwim River basin. But along the coast, we're looking at cooler readings, generally in the mid-50s for highs still. And then as we head into Friday morning, lows will generally be across much of the region, mid-40s to around 50 degrees. And then high temperatures Friday afternoon should get a little bit above 60 there. Bethel and Antioch back up to 63, perhaps as warm as 69 to near 70 at McGrath. And coming down the length of the Alaska Peninsula, 64 there at King Salmon. And as we get out into the Aleutians, perhaps back up into the mid-50s or so for highs there. Let's take a look now at the temperature outlook as we go through the end of the month, July 27th through the 31st, kind of reiterating what we were seeing the last couple of days. The temperatures are likely to average above normal along the Arctic coast, the east end, as well as the eastern North Slope areas and Brooks Range down into the Yukon Flats, east central areas. So that means more warm weather ahead. And temperatures are expected to average near or a bit below normal across the rest of the state, especially in the southeast. And then precipitation is expected to continue to average below normal across the eastern quarter or third of the state along the Alcan border and perhaps into the southeast, with a return of above normal precipitation looking a little better likelihood there throughout the Seward Peninsula and portions of the southwest, including the Yukon Delta. So keep that in mind as we go up here through the end of the month.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Here's your aviation weather to get us through Thursday into Friday. The two main weather features will be an area of low pressure forming and sitting out over especially the western portion of the Gulf of Alaska. And there'll be a trough from east central areas extending back through the northwest as an area of low pressure that's vertically stacked over the lower Chukchi Sea just kind of sits and spins and then gradually weakens here through the end of the week. And this low pressure system in the Gulf will generally not be all that strong, maybe briefly getting down to near a little below 1,000 millibars. But it will keep IFR conditions going across much of the northern Gulf, eastern Kenai, Cook Inlet, back through the interior southwest and west central areas. And by Thursday afternoon, we'll see some isolated scattered thunderstorms pop along the Alcan border from the eastern portion of the Brooks Range down through the White Mountains and Wrangell, Elias Mountains as well, and rather extensive IFR conditions off of the coast there, the southern coast there in the Gulf of Alaska, back through the Kenai and Kodiak Island. And then as we head into Friday morning, conditions may improve a bit there, though I still wouldn't doubt that there would be some pockets of IFR remaining on Friday in association with that Gulf low and the frontal trough that will be extending off toward the east and approaching and moving into along the coastal areas of the southeast panhandle. We'll still see a potential for some isolated to scattered thunderstorms, eastern Brooks Range, south Yukon Flats to areas near and east of Fairbanks. Otherwise, some relaxation in the IFR conditions, though they'll still persist along the northwest coast and out over parts of the Bering Sea and western Aleutians. Anaktuvik Pass up there in the north should generally start MVFR in the early morning, giving way to VFR conditions, and that'll be the case at Adigan Pass, MVFR early becoming VFR. Further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill will start out IFR, improving to MVFR later morning and afternoon. And that'll also be the case at Rainy Pass, where mainly the east entrance should see some IFR in the morning, giving way to general MVFR conditions for the day. And then at Windy Pass, look for MVFR conditions becoming VFR. And Isabel should generally hold on to VFR conditions, though an isolated thunderstorm could pop, especially in the vicinity of the pass, and especially as you're flying north and northeast of Isabel in the afternoon and early evening. Mentasta could have an isolated storm develop as well in the vicinity of the pass on Thursday, but better chance as you're flying to the north and northeast of Mentasta toward the Alcan border. And then Tanita, MVFR conditions becoming VFR. And then for Portage Pass, it'll be kind of a split. The east entrance, IFR in the morning becoming MVFR, and if the west entrance there should generally see MVFR conditions becoming VFR later in the morning and afternoon. And finally, for the southeast northern panhandle, Chilkoot and White will see IFR conditions in the early morning becoming MVFR for the remainder of the late morning and afternoon. Freezing levels are generally above 10,000 feet along the Alcan border and into northwest Canada, beneath that warm ridge of high pressure. Further to the west, though, we have the low pressure system upper level troughs that are responsible for the low that's developing out over the Gulf of Alaska. So freezing levels have come down to near and below 6,000 feet there in the vicinity of Nunavik Island and back up toward eastern Russia and the lower Chukchi Sea. As far as the best potential for icing will be there along the eastern Kenai, mouth of Cook Inlet, beginning of the southwest panhandle, including Kodiak Island, 11,000 to 19,000 feet. And then in the west, 9,000 to 17,000 feet, and between 8,000 and 16,000 feet over the lower Chukchi Sea. Here are the upper level winds as of this afternoon, Wednesday, and that energy will be spreading out in the Gulf, helping to develop that low that'll be located over the western half of the Gulf on Thursday, with a low over the Chukchi Sea. In the process, it's vertically stacked, but it will gradually weaken Thursday into Friday. Strongest mid-level winds will be passing south and southeast of the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. And again, that circulation, at least mid-levels, will wind down there over the lower Chukchi Sea. We still have a ridge of high pressure out over the Yukon. It'll stay in place, and then getting down to 3,000 feet, could be some turbulence with the winds circulating around the low that'll be over the western Gulf of Alaska with winds of 35 to 40 knots. And here, bringing it down to the surface to 4,000 feet, there will be the potential for some turbulence with the circulations ahead of and behind that low pressure system over the western Gulf for parts of the southeast, south central areas around Prince William Sound and the Kenai back into the Aleutians.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snyder, and joining me today is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. And Cindy, we hear a lot about tsunamis in the news, probably a lot more than we used to, but let's remind everybody, what is a tsunami?
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Sure.
Tsunami is basically, it's really simple. It's just a disturbance in the water column. So the entire water column from the seafloor to the sea surface is disturbed by something major, usually a major earthquake. But it can also be a volcanic eruption, even an asteroid. Landslide is especially dangerous.
Okay, so if I'm sitting in my bathtub and I drop a bath toy, that could be a bathtub tsunami.
It is absolutely a bathtub tsunami.
Okay, very good. So Alaska is one of the states, or maybe the state, with the greatest amount of coastline, so tsunamis are a pretty major risk here in Alaska. Who is most at risk?
Yeah, Alaska is significant. We actually make most of the Pacific's tsunamis on the Aleutian Trench, and it's where the Pacific Plate is subducting underneath the American Plate, and we produce some very large, great quakes, and of course the most at risk is the Aleutian Trench.
Okay.
But that extends into south central Alaska as well. They're at huge risk, and then southeast Alaska's risk is really mostly landslide focused.
Okay. Are there any places along the Alaskan coastline that don't have a tsunami risk, or at least a very, very low risk?
Absolutely. The Bering Sea's risk is very low, and the Arctic's risk is very low as well.
Okay, so when we're talking about tsunami dangers, those are places that need to be monitored, but probably not really.
No, I mean, I won't say never.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know better.
Science knows better.
Right. So,
very good.
Near to never.
Okay. Well, let's just say you're on the coast, anywhere in Alaska. What are warning signs that tsunami dangers are threatening you right now?
This is super important because Alaska's greatest risk, especially out on the Aleutians and South Central, is a near-field tsunami, and then of course landslides in southeast. It's even more intense because we can't.
So shorter warning time.
No warning time.
Okay.
The earthquake is the warning.
Okay.
And that is the most important thing for anybody to remember. The water can arrive in less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, at the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, we need to get the warning out in 5 minutes. So for those near-field tsunamis, it's the earthquake is the warning. So if you feel shaking, and of course the first thing you do is drop, cover, and hold, and you need to start counting slowly to 20.
The right way. How do you do that?
Oh, I teach kids to do it with their favorite things. So 1 chocolate, 2 chocolate, 3 chocolate, but you can count anything you like. And if you're thinking of something happy, that helps. Especially helps kids, but it'll help your psyche.
So you don't speed up because you're getting stressed out.
Right. It actually lowers your heart rate.
Interesting.
You know, so if you think of something you love and practice that. So you're in an earthquake, you're under the table, you're next to the ocean. Right. This is important if you're next to the ocean. If you're not next to the ocean, don't worry about it. Just stay in place under cover.
And you're talking about a mile, a quarter mile? What's close?
A mile, even a couple miles. You know, our rule of thumb used to be a mile inland was safe, but the last few tsunamis have taught us otherwise. So, yeah, you know, in Japan we had inundation up to 10 miles.
Right.
So.
And that was a big quake.
That was a big quake.
So you have a quake, you're counting slowly to 20.
To 20.
What's next?
And if you get to 20 and it's still shaking, you need to evacuate.
Okay.
And that is, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because you're evacuating in a live event that's still shaking. You know, 1964 shook for 4.5 minutes. Indonesia shook for 12 minutes.
Wow, right.
Japan, I think, shook for 6. I'm not sure of that, but it was long. Anyway, more than 20 seconds.
And that's a sign of a very major earthquake, the worst.
Well, 20 seconds is a magnitude 7, so that's not the worst. But what a magnitude 7 can do is trigger a landslide. And those landslides might be a submarine landslide, so you won't see it, you won't hear it, you won't know it, and then the water's moving. So that's really, really, really dangerous. That's what happened in '64 first. Seward, Valdez, Whittier all had landslides first.
And when you're talking about the water is a warning sign too. What happens with the water that gives you a very easy visual sign that something's changing?
Not guaranteed. It might go out, it might go way out really fast enough to leave the fish behind, but that's not guaranteed. It might just be a fast flood instead. So either way, if it's acting like a super fast rising tide, faster than a tide should rise, get out of there. And if it goes out really fast, get out of there. You know, we lost a lot of lives because people will go check out the new tide pools or
Sure.
pick up fish or shells or, you know, so, and it should feel weird.
Right.
You know, it should be weird.
So pay attention to those natural warning signs and how you feel, because those are maybe the only clues you have.
Right, and you know, sound also. You can hear a tsunami. It'll sound like a roaring train, maybe.
Okay.
Or it might sound silent because the water's been pulled out.
Right.
And that's pretty weird. Imagine camping
Yeah.
at night
Yeah.
near the beach, and all of a sudden you don't hear the ocean anymore.
That would be different.
That would be weird. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you also might hear blowing bubbles, and that's actually from the pressure that's blowing the air out from the sand grains, rock grains.
Interesting.
So if you hear blowing bubbles, that's a little weird.
Okay.
Or clinking rocks, you know, like a rain stick. So those are the sound signs. So the visual is rushing in or rushing out, and roaring especially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to get people and keep people aware of what the tsunami warning signs are and what their risks are around Alaska. And there's a website that can help them do that. Where can they go online to get more information for their school, their home, their church, their business?
Oh, there's several. The National Tsunami Warning Center has a website as well, and the easiest way to look that up is just NTWC.
NTWC.
The URL is not intuitive at all.
Okay.
There's also ready.alaska.gov. The state of Alaska has a lot of helpful stuff. Preparedness kits. They have everything you need to get ready.
Okay.
And then for teachers and others, there's a wonderful curriculum called Alaska Tsunami Education Program.
Alaska Tsunami Education Program. Okay.
And that's AKwx.
AKwx. Okay, very good. Those are really good tips to get more information and search that out and help your own community stay safe with the threat of tsunamis around Alaska. Next time we come back and talk to you some more about the Tsunami Ready program and get more in depth and how people can learn more about the risks and what to do here in Alaska. So thank you for joining us today, Cindy. And next time on Alaska Weather Facts, more on tsunamis around Alaska. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
We conclude our show with the marine weather segment and with today's sea ice edge. Not much change. We have a lot of open water there through the lower Chukchi Sea along the northwest coast, but still no inway to the navigational waters as you get northeast of Wainwright to come around Point Barrow. Along the Arctic coast, the ice still is there in place, but it is and will continue to slowly melt. We have a low pressure system over the lower Chukchi Sea that's just stationary and will slowly weaken over the next day or so. Otherwise, the low in the Gulf of Alaska has taken shape today. It's just east of Kodiak Island, and you can see the counterclockwise circulation influencing their areas of the southeast. Inner waterways, winds will be out of the south-southeast, anywhere from 15 to as high as 25 knots, Ketchikan down toward Dixon entrance with waves maybe upwards to 4 feet. Along the outer coast there and along the Gulf, winds will generally be out of the southeast to east at 25 knots, waves 9 to maybe as high as 10 feet. And then on Friday, winds come down a bit. We will see winds continuing south-southeast the inner waterways at 10 to 15 knots, waves generally a couple of feet in the inner channels, but down there toward the mouth of Dixon entrance, maybe 5 feet, and along the Gulf Coast there from Craig all the way up to Yakutat east westward, winds will be from the south-southeast around 15 to 20 knots and waves anywhere from 6 to around 8 feet. Across south-central areas, kind of up on to the top, to the north of the low-pressure circulation, winds will be out of the east-northeast. Prince William Sound 20 knots with 4-foot waves, but off the Kenai, easterly winds to 25 knots could kick up some waves of 8 feet, and generally a northerly component to the wind coming down the length of Cook Inlet with waves 4 or 5 feet there. On Friday, winds will continue to be out of the northeast off the Kenai at about 25 knots with waves of 8 feet. Northeast winds at 10 knots, waves though up there a little more sheltered at Prince William Sound at 2 feet. And winds will generally have a north-northwest component there through Cook Inlet with waves running a few feet. Across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island as the low slowly heads east-southeastward into the Gulf, we'll see winds turn more northwesterly to westerly. upwards to 20 to 25 knots on the Pacific side with waves of 6 to 7 feet, and generally west-northwest 20 knots, waves 5 feet there from Bristol Bay down toward Cold Bay. And then on Friday, winds will continue northwesterly there on the Pacific side, upwards to 20, 25 knots, waves 6 to 8 feet, and west-northwest winds around 15 knots on the Bering side with waves of 4 to 5 feet. The Aleutian chain will see winds the eastern half, generally 20 knots from the west-southwest, and waves 4 to 6 feet on the Pacific side and 3 to 5 feet on the Bering side. And as we go into Friday, the eastern Aleutian winds will tend to be 10 to 15 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet. And as we get further west, they'll become more southwesterly, especially west of Adak, picking up 20 to 25 knots and waves a little higher at 7 feet. Across the west coast, along the coast, winds will be west-northwest 10 to 15 knots, and waves generally 3 to 4 feet, though a little higher, around 5 feet or so south of St. Matthew through St. Paul and St. George. And then on Friday, winds come down a little bit. Generally, westerly winds 10 to maybe 15 knots from Norton Sound down to Nunavik Island and off of the delta there of the Kuskokwim River with waves of a few feet. And then along the Arctic coast, winds on Thursday will be easterly 15 to 20 knots, not little if any movement of the ice, and more of a northeast to east offshore flow there along the northwest coast into Kotzebue Sound, and waves in the lower Chukchi Sea 3 to 4 feet. On Friday, easterly winds continue at 15 to 20 knots along the Arctic coast, and the flow tries to come back onshore there, south of Cape Lisburne down toward the Seward Peninsula. Westerly winds 10 to 15 knots and waves right around 3 feet. So here's a quick check of the surface weather maps. Again, low pressure situated now east of Kodiak Island. That feature will continue to sit and spin through the Gulf, heading east-southeastward. That'll be the main weather feature here coming up for the next couple of days to close out the week. The low up over the lower Chukchi Sea, that will continue to gradually weaken as we head through Thursday. Not much of a gradient around that, so wind's not really strong enough to do much to push the ice at all along the Arctic coast. Otherwise, going into the day on Thursday, we continue to see the low to the east-southeast of Kodiak Island and frontal trough lifting up toward the southeast panhandle that'll spread a band of rain into that area by Thursday night and early Friday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.